My name is Grant Long Jr. I'm the owner and winemaker proprietor for Aonair Winery here in St. Helena. I started making wine as a kid, essentially in my parents' garage. Best friend's father was a home winemaker. Got to help him out a couple times in the harvest season when he needed extra hands. And not only fell in love with wine itself, but the concept that wine was built around this unattainable aspect, this luxury good that for me always felt so disconnected from who I was until seeing home wine made and the ability for it to be actually very, I don't want to say easy, but it was anybody can make wine. Biggest definition between those that own wineries versus those that are home winemakers is really just how much resource you have to be able to turn it into great wine. My story is a little different in the fact that I started making wine as a young person, no background, no family connection to the wine business itself. It went from a tipping point of being this thing I loved to do and it was part of my life to getting married and having kids and realizing that I needed to either decide it was going to be my career and future or whether it needed to continue to be something that was just not part of the day job. And in 2014, my wife and I kind of decided to take the big leap of quote-unquote debt and seek out a property that could be the future for this, hopefully, family legacy. In fact, this deck sitting here on the deck where many conversations were had of whether or not we had bitten off just a little bit more than we could chew. And it was the view and this place that kept us working toward that final goal of being able to get it open and finding a home for Aonair for the foreseeable future. The vines right here are 45 years old, and we'll call it TLC with some really good farming and a little extra effort are now doing really, really well. Hillside vineyards in Napa Valley have always been a sought-after commodity as some of the policies have changed, and being able to know that for the foreseeable future, this beautiful hillside is grandfathered into winemaking it's just a really great feeling. This block was planted in 2017, the first dedicated vineyard to Cabernet Sauvignon here on the property, and the only vineyard that will have seen 100% irrigation via BioFiltro. BioFiltro was originally introduced to me by one of my project managers that was helping us with the construction. When we bought the property, as I mentioned, it was an outdated winery, and a lot of the current regulations and updates to wastewater management had changed since this winery was put in when septic was the standard. With the BioFiltro, it ended up being a scenario where the basic makeup of what filters the water didn't require someone to be on site on a regular basis. The standard process for waste management over the last couple decades was a standard called hold and haul. You captured all of that wastewater from winemaking in a tank somewhere. A truck came in, picked it up, and then hauled it all the way down to East Bay Mud. BioFiltro system of keeping it all intact on site, and all of the water that comes out of the waste management ending up back in your vineyard is a huge piece for lowering that carbon footprint at your vineyard. The BioFiltro system itself being able to pull what would be essentially 98% of the water out of our well for winemaking, 98% of it going back to the vineyard. It has a really great feel to know that the land was here long before you arrived, the land will be here long after you're gone, and yet the footprint you leave will be much smaller than a different system. You're really looking at dirt, worms, and that's really the extent of the system. During the winemaking process, you have certain times of the year that there's a greater amount of flow and or pressure from a chemical perspective. Many of the other systems would be shocked by those pressures, those timely aspects or untimely aspects throughout the year. My experience with the BioFiltro is that there's a much greater margin for error in that shocking of the system itself. Being one of the first ones in Napa Valley to be approved for it was also kind of a fun aspect, going back to what I mentioned earlier with being kind of one of the younger guys in the business and trying to take on something that is a little bit different than everybody else. That aspect of being able to be one of the first in what I consider to be, hopefully, a game changer for a lot of the waste management in Napa Valley is fun to be one of the first. A lot has changed over the years for me, from again working in the business and building up my passion for wine to today being one of the younger first-generation winery owners in Napa. So with an ever-evolving landscape in Napa Valley where the wine business is not going anywhere, and winemaking itself, the process of making wine really hasn't changed in hundreds of years, there will always be wastewater as a result of making wine. This system, for me, I believe, based upon its financial investment to get started, the result is the future of what is going to make Napa Valley's winemaking process less difficult for both economics as well as environmental footprint.